For more on this and other matters on Capitol Hill, let's bring in Republican Congressman from Florida, Byron Donalds. He's a member of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, the House Budget Committee, and the House Committee on Small Business. Good to have you on again, Congressman. Thank you for being here. When Republicans took over the House in the first, 2 years after the election of President Obama, earmarks, I thought, were eliminated. It sounds like earmarks are creeping back into the nation's business here.
Listen, we got rid of earmarks a long time ago because it's wasteful. Frankly, it's corruptive of the legislative process and the budgetary process. And it's indicative of how terrible the ideas are coming from the Democrat side of the aisle, that they literally have to buy off members of Congress in order to support these radical bills and these radical ideas. We should not be bringing back earmarks. They should continue to be left in the past of the way Washington used to work. If they want to get buy-in for these spending bills, then they have to be bills that actually are built on the merits, that actually work for the American people, and not buying members off to get pork back to their districts.
Yeah, what does an underground railroad in Silicon Valley have to do with COVID relief for the rest of the nation?
It has absolutely nothing to do with it. Just like $15 minimum wage has nothing to do with it. Just like sending more money to school districts when there's already $50+ billion that is unspent to help school districts reopen. Just like sending billions of dollars to state and local governments that refuse to let their businesses reopen. That's the problem with this bill. I know the president wants to say the cornerstone of his bill is money to get vaccines and checks for people who are unemployed. But the reality is the cornerstone of this bill is wasteful spending. It is pork, and it's buying off members of Congress just so they can get their liberal wish list using coronavirus pandemic as an excuse.
One thing a lot of parents would like to see reopen is their local schools. They're afraid that their kids are not doing well with distance learning. And frankly, somebody's got to care for those kids if they're at home. What are the prospects, do you think, of getting schools back open across the country?
John, this is one of those things that really it's about local governments, local school districts, and the local teachers unions. Washington, D.C. sending money to districts is not going to help schools reopen. Florida schools have been open since August of last year, since the beginning of the school year. What it took in Florida was leadership and a plan, which we developed using CDC guidelines in order to make sure our kids can get back into the classroom safely. We have provided a hybrid program for those parents who weren't comfortable sending their children back to school. But these other states and these other cities are not following the science, John. They're following political science. They don't need money from D.C. These parents in these communities need to get in front of their school board members, their mayors, and frankly, their teachers unions and demand that they reopen so their kids can learn and actually propel their education and get their futures back on track.
Well, wouldn't a little push from the White House help?
Frankly, a little push isn't needed from the White House. If they needed a push, frankly, what the White House is doing is no push at all. The White House came out with this lame plan of 1 day a week. 1 day a week for a child isn't helping. I have 3 sons. If I sent my 9-year-old son to school 1 day a week, he's not learning. He's not getting ahead. That's just a day per week to get acclimated to what's going on in the classroom. It's not to provide consistent instruction. The White House has failed on this measure. What they should be doing is what the previous administration was doing, actually, and that is promoting that schools open 5 days a week, but provide hybrid programs and those other things for parents in those communities who don't feel comfortable sending their kids back.
One of the things the Biden administration is undoing is much of the immigration approach of the previous administration. Listen to Stephen Miller, who was a top advisor to former President Trump. Listen.
This legislation proposes sending applications to previously deported illegal immigrants and giving them the chance to re-enter the country on a rapid path to citizenship. The current administration has already dismantled border security, restoring catch and release, and additionally gutting interior enforcement, issuing a memo preventing ICE from removing the vast majority of criminal illegal immigrants that it encounters.
What do you think about that? Does he have that right in your view?
Stephen Miller has it exactly right. I was talking with one of my local sheriffs about the 287G program, which is being dismantled by this administration. Down here in Collier County, Florida, we were sending about 50 to 70 illegal aliens who were basically broke our laws here in Collier County over to the detention facility in Homestead, Florida. Under the new administration's plan, that's down to 2, maybe 3 inmates a week. It's a catastrophe for our country. They're not securing the southern border. They're allowing people to come across the border illegally with impunity. And what that's fostering are these caravans coming out of South America, which is not helping. Listen, John, we got 2 big problems. One, we want to control COVID-19 and get our country back open. Allowing people to come into the country en masse with very little checks is not going to help the United States. Number 2, if we have to get people back to work, including, frankly, black and brown people back to work. And so bringing in other people into the workforce at the low end of the socioeconomic spectrum is not going to help our low-skilled workers, whether they're white, black, or Hispanic, here in the United States. These are liberal policies. These are not effective policies for the future of our country.
The former president is going to be making his first post-presidential speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference next week. Mike Huckabee had some thoughts on that. Listen.
I think the first thing that the president should say when he gets to the podium at CPAC is, y'all miss me yet? We miss pro-life policies. We miss pro-America policies. We miss the pushback against China. We miss the kind of job opportunities for minorities, women that we had under President Trump. This was never about his personality. It was about the things that he did as president, and boy, do we miss them now.
So we're all interested to hear on what the former president has to say. What would you like to hear from him?
Frankly, what I want to hear from President Trump is a reminder to the American people of how successful his policies were for our country. Frankly, about how the reason that 1 million+ people in the United States are being vaccinated today is because of his leadership under Operation Warp Speed, and has nothing to do with the current administration. And frankly, a reminder that our allies across the world, and quite frankly, our greatest ally, Israel, needs our help now more than ever. And we should not be going back to the table with the Iranian regime. We should be standing by Israel. We should be standing by our allies across the world. We should be promoting Middle East peace, not breaking it down by going back to Iran, and making sure that our country stays America first and not caught up in Paris Climate Accords or anything else that doesn't help the American people.
Byron Donalds, a Florida congressman and a father of 3 boys. Congressman, thank you.
Thanks for having me, John.